We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words that make...
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Those Were the Days with George Mitchell. George. Good morning, George.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you again.
And you, mate. What year are we looking at today, mate?
94-95. Second season in the Premiership.
Great stuff. Back to you then, George. I'll let you take over for the next 90 minutes.
Thank you. Just to sort of kind of, like I usually do, put you where we are, 93, 94. Some of the music, Come Baby Come by K7. Things Can Only Get Better by Dream or D-Ream. Anything, Culture Beat, All for Love. Now that's a big one. Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting. Now I remember that there was a lot of fuss about that one. It was a promising record. Cornflake Girl by Tom Amos. Save Our Love, Eternal. So lots of good music for those that like their music, and those that were picture goers, cinema goers. Or pictures when I was a kid. Forrest Gump was the number one for a long time. And Speed, Ed Wood, The Crow, the Clarks. Forrest Gump's the only one of those that I really like. Some of the others I found a bit weird. So that's where we are in terms of where else was happening. In terms of Newcastle United, well, as usual, lots of friendlies at the beginning. They played a couple of teams in Malta, and then they played Wrexham. A testimonial for, I think it was Cantona at Manchester United. 29,000 at the match, which was quite something. Then Sampdoria, and then they played a Northern Ireland 11. The usual range of friendlies, always at Newcastle at the beginning of the season. Some of the first pictures, Steve, of the strips, I think I put out. Yeah, I like that strip. I thought that was a nice, tidy strip with the collar on. It was and of course, for those that think that the green strip we're wearing now is the only green strip we've had, well, no, it's not. There's another one that we had and wore quite successfully. We get into our season proper, and the first game that we're looking at is Leicester City, away from home, and it's Keegan picks a pretty predictable team. As usual with Keegan, the transfers in the summer were huge. I just quickly look at the ins and the outs. He certainly was starting to set up the entertainers in this season, because coming in were people like Albert and Mark Hottiger, Philip Albert, Steve Guppy, Paul Kitson, Keith Gillespie, James Crawford, but out as well. Alex Matthew, Matty Appleby, Kevin Brock, Steve Guppy didn't stay long. And the big one, of course, was Andy Cole, which Keegan found himself trying to explain on the steps of St James's Park to angry fans because they saw Andy Cole going. Anyway, back to the first game, Leicester City. And Pavel Hottiger, John Beresford was there, Barry Venison, Darren Peacock, Philip Albert, Rule Fox, Rob Lee, Andy Cole, Peter Beardsley, and Scott Sellers. So you're seeing, as I say, the start of the entertainers. And 20,000 at Filbert Street at Leicester's old ground. And it was, from a Newcastle point of view, an excellent game. It was a good football game. Leicester tended to be a good football side, as they are now, and had one or two old stagers in the team by this time, like Steve Walsh and Nicky Morgan, Simon Grayson. Simon Grayson, of course, became quite a talented manager later on, with Blackpool particularly. Steve Agnew, who's a name we know for a variety of reasons. Mark Blake, Mark Draper, and Julian Joachim, who was a dangerous centre forward. In fact, I think there was a period when Newcastle would have liked him. As I say, 20,000, just over 20,000 in the ground, and a game which, 0-0 at half time. It was entertaining, but nobody could put the ball in the onion bag. Then after half time, the game became how can I say, a show between Beardsley and Cole. They tore the Leicester defence apart. 51 minutes, Andy Cole scored. 58, Beardsley. And then Robbie Elliott on 74 scored the last one. And right at the death, the very last kick, Joachim scored a consolation for Leicester to make it 3-1. But it was a comfortable victory for Newcastle and a good start. The next game is a home game against Chelsea. Chelsea are playing well and not out. Sorry.
No, sorry, mate. The program they sent us is for a different game, so it's not for the league game. Sorry.
All right. Okay. It's only change in our team is that Pavel's got an injury and Mike Hooper comes in the goal, but otherwise it's the same team as we played in our first game. 35,000 at the game. Obviously, anticipation that we're going to do well. People fastening onto the Keegan mantra that they score 3, we'll score 4. And this was an entertaining game, a really good game. And our old friend Gavin Peacock starts the scoring for Chelsea. And Andy Cole equalises almost instantly. And Rule Fox on 20 minutes makes it 2-1. Paul Furlong equalises on 30 minutes for Chelsea. And then second half, it's all Newcastle and all particularly Andy Cole. 66 minutes he scores. And then a bit later on, he lays on a goal for Rob Lee, shot from the edge of the penalty area. And we run out 4-2 winners and a comfortable victory. And we're sitting nicely in the league at that point. We then play a UEFA Cup first round game against Antwerp. And it's at the first game legs at Antwerp. And it's a game that doesn't seem to trouble me at all. In fact, it's a rare game in the sense that we win 5-0, but Rob Lee scores a hat-trick, 1 minute, 9 minutes and 50 minutes. Scott Sellers on 39 and Steve Watson on 78. We went in 3-0 at half time and added 2 more to get the get the victory. But same team as we sent, except my Tutos in 20,000 at the game, which I gather is quite a big crowd for Antwerp. They have one or two Belgian internationals, Nico Brokhurst at heart at fullback, George Coulsar, Emmanuel Grolford, Chris Porte. They're all current Belgian internationals. So Antwerp's side was quite a decent one. But we come away with a 5-0 victory away from home. And next game is a home game against Arsenal. Yep. And an away game against Arsenal. And I think Steve and I already discussed the program's there, but it's not a very good copy, so we've left it. Arsenal regarded as one of the top teams now and challenging. Our team, Pavel's back, otherwise the same team, Hottiger, Beresford. Steve Howie comes in alongside Darren Peacock, Philip Albert, Rule Fox, Rob Lee, Andy Cole, Peter Beardsley and Scott Sellers. So Keegan's sticking to a set format and 36,000 at Highbury. And people are hopeful that we might get something out of the game because we're playing well at the moment. So are Arsenal, but they've had one or two hiccups. Their danger players, of course, are well known to her. They've got David Seaman in goal, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, John Jensen, Martin Keown, who we see a lot on telly now, Tony Adams, Ray Parler, Ian Wright, of course, Shearer's mate on the telly, Alan Smith, Paul Merson, who we see on the television, and Hans Schwartz on the left side of their attack. A dangerous team at that time. But so were we, and as always with Keegan's teams, they give it a go from the off. Martin Keown gets in the way of a blast from Beardsley and deflects it into the net on 7 minutes. Tony Adams from a corner equalises on 9 minutes, and it stays that way till just on half time, just the last kick before the half time whistle. And Beardsley again scores from a penalty after Andy Cole's brought down, and we go in 2-1 at the break. Come out and end-to-end stuff, but goals aren't coming until Ruel Fox does one of his mazy dribbles and manages to slip one in the bottom corner to make it 3-1. And then with the last kick of the game, Ian Wright, it would be Ian Wright, scores a consolation for him and for Arsenal, and we run out 3-2 winners. But we deserved the victory. We played well enough to deserve the victory, and sit was nicely up the league at the right end of the league. And we come home to a home game against Barnsley. Barnsley, Cinderella club, really, the regarded as almost as cannon fodder for the big teams like Newcastle and others. But they're a tidy side, and 28,000 come to the game. We entertain them with the unchanged team: Cernichuk, Hottiger, Beresford, Howie, Peacock, Philip Albert, Rural Fox, Rob Lee, Andy Cole, Beardsley and Sellers. And this is the second round of the League Cup. It's a cup progress even now. We've struggled with it in recent years. And everybody thinks, well, it's Barnsley, we should make progress in this. So we we set off thinking that they're playing well, everything's going well. Then suddenly, a man called Neil Redfern, who we know at St James's recently, scores for Barnsley, and everybody gets a bit of a sweat on. But fortunately, on 25 minutes, Andy Cole equalises, so we go in 1-1 at half time. Second half is very dour. Barnsley hanging on for dear life, not going to give anything away, and it needs a bit of magic to sort it out. And the man that does it is Rule Fox, another mazy dribble and a slip the ball into the bottom of the net from just inside the area, and a decent goal from Rule Fox, which sends the Gallagher corner home happy. Barnsley manager is Danny Wilson, whose good reputation as a former player and manager for other teams. They have some old stagers in the side that have got well known. A goalkeeper, Dave Watson, was well known. Steve Davis at centre back, Gary Snowden, who played for a number of big sides, including Manchester City, and Danny Wilson himself, who was player manager, and Neil Redfern, who we've just talked about, playing up front, and the centre forward Andy Payton, who they got from Burnley, was in his heyday was a dangerous centre forward, but he still was a good player. But we beat them 2-1, and we get ready for the second leg. Next game is a home game against Liverpool. Liverpool are tipped to be up there with the front runners for the championship, and the side is star-studded, of course. 35,000 at the game, and we got David James, Broinby, the Norwegian fullback, Rob Jones, Phil Babb, Neil Razor Ruddick, John Scales, Steve McManaman, Jan Molby, John Barnes, Robbie Fowler, and Ian Rush, and Nigel Clough as a substitute. Quite a star-studded team, and as I say, the pundits reckon they're in for a shot at the championship. Good game, end-to-end stuff, but it doesn't look like anybody's going to score a goal. Some good saves by Pavel, excellent saves by Pavel is my memory, and at this moment in time, we want to win this one because we're lying with the possibility of being top of the league if we win this one. And we all get cheered up by Rob Lee on 50 minutes with a beautiful drive from the edge of the box, as usual, from Rob Lee to make it 1-0. And everybody's hoping that that's it. But no, Ian Rush bamboozles our defence on 70 minutes and slides in an equaliser at 1-1. From then on, it was end-to-end stuff, but nobody looked like they were going to score. So we went out 1-1 against Liverpool, which is people will accept against a good team like Liverpool. Our team is unchanged. Cernachuk, Hoddiger, Barrasford, Venison, Peacock, Philip Albert, Rule Fox, Rob Lee, Andy Cole, Beardsley, and Scott Sellers. However, midway through the first half, Barry Venison goes off and Steve Howie comes on as a substitute. But a good 1-1 draw and keeps us in place of taking over at the top in first place, with challengers were Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, Blackburn were there. So the next game is the return game in the UEFA Cup against Antwerp. 29,000, nearly 30,000 at this game, and that's quite something for that cup at the time. Antwerp obviously don't want to get another thrashing like they did on their own pitch, but unfortunately, that's exactly what happens. We're really on form in this game. and Keegan is, as always, plays full strength team, and they come with virtually the same team that played in Antwerp, with a range of Belgian internationals in their side. They added one other international who was a big goal scorer, Kurt Wagenpumpel, and unfortunately, within a quarter of an hour, he had to go off. He was substituted. He had an injury. Anyway, it was a tidy game of football, but only going to be one winners, because on 10 minutes, Rob Lee set were going, and then Andy Cole, a virtuoso performance, another hat-trick, 26, 39, 88 minutes, and in between 35 minutes of Peter Beardsley penalty. We went in 4-0 at half-time, and the extra goal towards the end from Andy Cole made it 5. In between, on 79 and 80 minutes, Antwerp pulled back a couple of consolations, but they were never really in the game as a challenge. It was Newcastle's night. It was always going to be Newcastle's night. So we make progress in the UEFA Cup, and it's. I think it's appreciated by the crowd. Certainly wasn't the Gallagher corner. I know that. The next game is away to Aston Villa in the league, and we go with an unchanged side. Černíček, Hotiger, etc., all in the team. Steve Howe retains his place because Venison's still injured. 29,000. Well, nearly 30,000, couple of hundred off 30,000 at Villa Park, and at this current time, we're actually first in the Premiership, which has everybody very, very happy, smiley. Referees worth a mention: Dermot Gallagher, another referee in a day that is the name you got to know because he wasn't frightened to say things. He used to come out and say what was what. Good game, good entertaining game at Villa Park. It's 0-0 at half time. It looked like it was going to end up at 0-0, do everything but score. But second half, Andy Cole and Beardsley really made life difficult for Villa, and laid on a goal on 66 minutes for Rob Lee. Then on 83, Andy Cole himself finished it off, and we came away with a 2-0 victory. We then have the return leg of our League Cup second round against Barnsley, and could be a banana skin, but let's see how we'll perform. Well, as it happens, they did quite well. They never looked like losing this one. 11,000 rather at the Oakwell Stadium, and it was 41 minutes just before half time. Andy Cole scores for us, so we're now 3-1 ahead on aggregate, and that's the way it stays. Barnsley never looked like challenging, and we never looked like giving it away. But certainly they played like they wanted to win, like you would expect for a Newcastle side, especially a Keegan side. So we get through 3-1 on aggregate against Barnsley. So the next game's a home game against Blackburn Rovers in the league. Touted to be one of the challengers for the championship. The side of all stars: Tim Flowers in goal, Henningberg at fullback, Colin Henry, big blown centre back, and Paul Werhurst, Graham Lasso that they bought from Chelsea for a lot of money, and then in the forward line, Tim Sherwood, Stuart Ripley, Mark Atkins, and of course the one and only Alan Shearer as the centre forward. And I don't think it's too strong to say that he was the reason they were touted for the championship. They were playing well, but all the goals are coming through Shearer. 35,000 nearly at the game, and an entertaining game, end-to-end stuff. First half, everybody, including Shearer, tried but couldn't hit the net. So it went to 0-0 at half time. After the half time whistle, Shearer gave our defence quite a run around, and eventually was brought down by John Beresford, and got up and scored the penalty himself. So they were 1-0 in the lead, and good value for it, I must say. But then something incredible happened, and it sticks in my memory now because I was there. An in-swinging corner from Sellers, who decided to take the corner, and Tim Flowers punched it into his own net. And that was on 88 minutes. So they barely had time to restart the game before we ended up with a 1-1 draw. But it was an entertaining game, and no doubt about it that on both sides, the centre forwards, Cole and Shearer, were the stars of the game. We now go to Crystal Palace, and somewhere where we would hope to win, and always think we've got a chance there, always. And Keegan sends the unchanged team. Cernacek, one slight difference, right back Hottiger's injured and Steve Watson comes in. Otherwise, it's the same team. And 18,000 at Selhurst Park, and a good entertaining game, some good football. Palace stars, Nigel Martin in goal, England goalkeeper for a little while, and Chris Coleman in the back of the defence, the Welsh guy who became quite a popular manager and Welsh manager for a while. Dean Gordon, John Salaco, who was a very dangerous wide player, and Chris Armstrong at centre forward, and Andy Priest, who was a dangerous player as well. So not a bad side, quite a tidy game, 0-0 at half time, and looking like it was going to end like that until just almost the last kick of the game. The ball went to Beardsley, and he went on one of his mazy runs and finally slotted it into the back of the net with the goalkeeper standing watching. And so we come away with a 1-0 victory, which is fantastic because that keeps with top of the league. Everybody's more than happy with that. Next is the second round of the UEFA Cup, the first leg against Bilbao from Spain. Now, my memory of this game was it was a really nice game to see, good match, and we sailed into 9 minutes. Rule Fox scored, and Beardsley penalty made it 2-0 before half time, and then 56 Andy Cole made it 3, and everybody thought, well, that's it, we're going to storm through here. But Bilbao weren't going to go that easy. They're two dangerous attackers, Zaganda and Saunces, both managed to contribute 80-minute goals, and that's them there. On 72 minutes and 80 minutes, they scored and made it 3-2. And for the last 10 minutes, it was backs to the walls for Newcastle. It looked like Bilbao might actually turn the whole thing over, having looked like they were down and out at 3-0. But we held on and got a 3-2 victory. The important thing about that is that for them to get 2 goals away from home in the UEFA Cup was a monumental thing to do in those days because it meant so much. So then we have a home game in the league against Sheffield Wednesday, and they aren't sort of pressing for anything special. And at the moment, we're still top with our side, full side. Cernacek, Hodegger's back at fullback now, and otherwise the team's unchanged. With Paul Kitson and Lee Clark on as substitutes. Paul Kitson had just been bought into Newcastle. He unfortunately suffered the fact that when Andy Cole went, people thought that he was the natural person, the goal scorer. And Paul Kitson was a good player, but not on the same class as Andy Cole. But I think he did suffer a little bit because of that. 35,000 at the game, and entertaining game. Steve Watson, 35 minutes, and then Andy Cole on 37. And we're 2-0 in the lead at half time. And that's how it stays. And it looks like we're going to go out easy winners until 56 minutes. And Ian Taylor scores for Sheffield. And it becomes a bit of the backs to the wall effect after having been comfortable. We're then having to defend quite deeply. And some of the Sheffield team, Kevin Pressman, Peter Atherton, Dan Petrescu, Des Walker, Ian Nolan, John Sheridan, a tidy player, Andy Sinton, who we get to know much better, Mark Bright, a very dangerous centre forward, and David Hurst, a very tall, rough, tumble, broad, bullion centre forward that some people used to like. And sadly, a few weeks after that, he was to have one of the worst leg breaks I've ever seen on a football field at Roker Park. And it kind of curtailed his career, poor soul. Steve Watson and Andy Cole put with 2-0 at half time, and Ian Taylor scores and gives them a bit of a sweat. But we run out 2-1 winners, and we remain firmly first place still. We're then away to Manchester United. It's going to be every game at Old Trafford's a tough game, and this one's no exception. 44,000 in the ground at Old Trafford, and their team, well, it's littered with stars and others. Peter Schmeichel, Steve, Roger, Bruce, Gary Pallister, Dennis Irwin, Ryan Giggs, Paul Ince, Roy Morris Keane, it says here, Roy Keane, John McNair, Baclair, Eric Cantona, Eric Daniel Pierre Cantona. I like these names, and Mark Hughes. What a talented side, and they certainly were, because they give us a tough time. Gary Pallister from a corner in 11 minutes made it 1-0, and then on 77 minutes, they got the second goal from Ryan Giggs, and they ran out 2-0 winners. We weren't humbled, but we were never really going to win this game. They were just a bit too good for us, and although that defeat happened, we were still at the top of the league, where Manchester United were being tipped as one of the possible winners of the championship. So we go away to Spain to our return leg with Bilbao, in the hope that we can get a victory out of this. We've got 3-2 victory in our pocket, but as things go with 0-0 to half time, it looked like it was going well for us. Then on 67 minutes, Zaganda, their dangerous forward, Spanish international forward, scored a goal. And because they got 2 goals at St James's Park, and in those days away goals counted double, they suddenly were in the lead just with a 1-0 victory, and that's how it stayed. That was the end of a UEFA Cup adventure that year. A good game, and the lads did give it a go, but as I said, defeated by the rules and the fact that we gave 2 silly goals away at St James's Park came back to bite us in the bum. So there we are, out of the UEFA Cup, sadly, but live to fight another day. And we're home now to a game against QPR. QPR, always an entertaining side in those days, and some real star names in David Bardsley at fullback, Alan MacDonald, Simon Barker, Steve Hodge, Trevor Sinclair, Les Ferdinand, and Kevin Gallen, a very talented set of footballers. 35,000 at the game. Our side, Keegan's and changed team. Cernacek's back and fixed. Hottager, Beresford, Howie, Peacock, Albert, Steve Watson come in because there's an injury on the right side. Rob Lee and Paul Kitson slips into the centre of the attack. Peter Beardsley and Rule Fox, and Paul Kitson slipped in because I think that's when Andy Cole was transferred. Anyway, we get off to a good start. 20 minutes, Kitson scored, and then just before half time, Beardsley scores, going 2-0 at half time, and then at right on the hour, Danny Ditchy, the dangerous attacker, scored on the hour. However, it wasn't backs to the wall after that. We won comfortably. QPR did try, but as you'd expect, the big danger, of course, was Ferdinand, but he was kept relatively quiet by the Newcastle defence, and we got our victory. We're now away to Nottingham Forest. Forest a good side, but shouldn't be any trouble to us. We're still sitting first in the table at the moment, and unchanged team: Cernachuk, Hottager, Beresford, Peacock, Albert, Clark, Watson, Rob Lee, Paul Kitson, Peter Beardsley, and Rule Fox. And it's a good football game, except that they could have played another game and still wouldn't have scored because it was 0-0 at half time and 0-0 at the end. It was a drab 0-0, but it was clear that whatever they did, it was hitting the woodwork, it was hitting the bar, near misses, but nobody seemed as though they could actually steer it into the onion bag. The Nottingham Forest team, well, Mark Crossley, character, and in goal, Stuart Pearce at fullback, Colin Cooper, David Phillips, Steve Stone, who we got to know a little bit more, Ian Warren, a winger, desperately dangerous winger, who used to trouble us every time we played him, had a cannonball shot in either foot, and used to make life quite difficult for us. And a gentleman called Stan Collymore playing in the forward line as well. Dangerous side, but 22,500 in the game. But they could have played another game, and they would, neither side would have scored. It was entertaining or not, they weren't entertaining enough to find the goal. So we now have a game against Wimbledon. Yeah, away at Wimbledon, with the instigators of the crazy gang on the front, Vinnie Jones. They always a colourful side to play. There's no doubt about that, irrespective of what people used to say, call them the crazy gang. They were do or die players. They gave everything and hoped to get everything. Anyway, we went with the hope of a win, but Wimbledon were just how can I say? They bullied us off in the game. Playing good football, we made a mistake early on in 2 minutes, and Andy Clark, the dangerous attacker, scored for them, and it looked like we're in for a real shellacking, because Kuku, the African centre forward, on 27 minutes made it 2-0, and but then on 30 minutes Peter Beardsley scored. 32 minutes Paul Kitson scored, and we got the 2-2, and then just 40 minutes our old friend Mick Harford made it 3-2, and the Wimbledon side was full of characters. Hans Segers in goal. Because our old friend Warren Barton was at fullback for them then. Andy Thorne, who we got to know much later, Vinnie Jones, Andy Clark, Efna Kuku, and John Goodman, and Mick Harford came on as substitute. But they bullied us out of it. They were a very strong physical side, which was led by none other than Vinnie Jones, of course. 3-2 at half-time and 3-2 at the end. But a piece of entertaining football for those who like the competition between a team using muscle and a team trying to use skill. Well, the muscle won on that day, but an entertaining win. The only downside for us was that defeat knocked us down to third in the league, having been top for so many weeks. And we'll come home to a home game against Ipswich, and Ipswich, another good footballing side, managed by Paul Goddard, who's an old Sarge that played for us. Some other good names in though: Steve Sedgley, Klaus Thompson, David Linnigan, Phil Whelan, Paul Mason, Geraint Williams, Ian Marshall, dangerous centre forward, and Adrian Paz, dangerous wide player. And a good side, playing good football, which, Paul Goddard was gaining a reputation as a manager. Don't know what happened to him. He seemed to lose his way after Ipswich. But he was making quite a reputation. 35,000 at St James's for this game. And people are hopeful that we could get it 3 points out of this game. 86 minutes before Andy Cole scores for us. And everybody thinks, well, that's it. There's hardly going to be time to kick off before the goal. But 90 minutes, last kick of the game, Klaus Thompson, the dangerous winger, makes it 1-1 right at the death, and there isn't any time to restart the game hardly. So we have to settle for a 1-1 draw, and that fixes us in about third position, which isn't going down too well with the Gallagher corner, because we've been top for so many weeks, and it's a bit disappointing, but still, bear in mind this is just our second year back in the Premiership. So our next game is an away game at Manchester City, and always some good games against Manchester City over the years.
Is this the League Cup, George?
I'm just yes, it is. Sorry, yes.
Coca-Cola Cup, yeah.
It is League Cup, fourth round. Yeah, fourth round, and it's a game. Obviously, Keegan's taken seriously because the full side goes out, and Manchester City is just building their own squad up and being talked about as possible challengers, but not necessarily this particular year. But some of the characters in the team: Andy Dibble in goal, Keith Curl at the back, Ian and David Brightwell, the Brightwell brothers, Steve Lomas, Nicky Summerby, Gary Flitcroft, Peter Beagry, Paul Walsh, and Niall Quinn playing for them. 26,000 at Main Road, and for this Wednesday night game, and it's end-to-end stuff. It's a good game. Their most dangerous forward is their substitute when he comes on. Ovi Rosler, the German centre forward, comes on and causes us all sorts of problems. Our substitute had just put us in the lead on 11 minutes, and we thought we were going to sail through. Well, Rosler had different ideas than that, and we ended up with a 1-1. The substitute that we had was somebody that Keegan brought in, Mike Jeffrey, and he'd only been on a few minutes when he scored the opening goal. But we conceded to Rosslad on 69, and that's the way it stayed to the end. So but a 1-1 draw, City gives us a good foundation for the return leg, and we see what comes after that. We're now heading towards a game against Tottenham at Tottenham, and it's where did that come from? Yes, it is, and we hoping to get something out of this, but Tottenham are again one of the sides at the top fighting as we are, and unfortunately they're on form when we go to White Hart Lane. 28,000 in the crowd, and Teddy Sheringham's on form, so much so we get a virtuoso performance from him with a hat trick: 14, 38 minutes, and then 70 minutes, and Papakashiu, the dangerous Romanian forward, scores a fourth, and in between, Ruel Fox scores on 29th and 41 minutes for Newcastle. 2-2 at half time, but after the second half, it was all Teddy Sheringham. He showed why he was the dangerous player he was. And their team, managed now by Jerry Francis, Ian Walker in goal, Dean Austin, Colin Calderwood, Sol Campbell, Bob Peskew, Gary Mabbitt, Darren Anderton, Nick Barmby, Teddy Sheringham, and centre forward, German man called Jürgen Klinsmann, who was as dangerous as they come. So a defeat which was disappointing, but against a good side. It keeps us at third in the league, but so many teams queuing up behind us. The hopes of hanging on to third are a bit of a worry for certainly in the Gallagher corner. We then go home to a game against Leicester City, and this is a game we expect to win. We'd beaten them at their place on the opening day of the season, and we couldn't see why we shouldn't do it again. And Leicester come with a team of all-stars in some ways. Names Colin Hill, Simon Grayson, Mark Blake, Mark Draper, Steve Thompson, David Oldfield, and Julian Joachim. dangerous side, 34,400 in St James's Park, and a game which is marked by the fact that all the goals to Newcastle are scored by defenders. Philip Albert on 32 minutes, and then David Oldfield scores for them on 48. Then on 50 minutes, Steve Howie scores for us. And then on 70 minutes, Philip Albert gets the second from a corner and makes it 3-1. And that's the way it stayed. A game we never looked like losing. And a game which, as I say, the defenders took all the plaudits because of the way the goals were scored. And gave us a firm fixture in third place. The team's virtually the same, but odd changes with Pavel, Hottiger, Beresford, Howie, Peacock, Albert. Steve Watson's now got a permanent place on the right. Barry Venison's back in, but playing a bit further forward, and Peter Beardsley and Raoul Fox. Another referee, Gary Willard, who was always prepared to talk and sometimes get himself into trouble by talking, but I have to say I prefer that to some of the nonsense that's going on now, where we've got the referee talking to people somewhere in Stockley Park and nobody except them to know what's being said. That should be public, and I think that some of the names that I've mentioned would be happy to do that. Right, we're now away at the Coventry, a decent side. The Highfield Road, 17,200 there, and we go with the same team, unchanged team, and only changes are in substitutes, but otherwise the team itself is as we expected. People expecting a win at Coventry because they're nothing special, but a good game of football. But it's another one of those there. They could have played another game and still never scored. It was 0-0 half time, and 0-0 it stayed, and was that kind of game. Lots of good stuff, hitting woodworks, hitting bars, blocks on the line, but unfortunately nobody could put one in the net. Coventry team, one or two characters, Steve Ogrizovic in goal, Brian Burrows, Steve Presty at the back, Paul Cook, John Darby, Sean Flynn, Roy Wiggery, who they'd just bought, and Peter Endlove, who was a very, very clever centre forward, very pacey. But none of them were pacey enough to get a goal in this game. It was a 0-0, and was always going to be 0-0. Just couldn't get it in the net. We then come home to the replay of the League Cup against Manchester City, and everybody thinks, well, we're going to make progress in this. City aren't is outstanding as some of the other teams in the division. So we send out this unchanged team. Paul Bracewell comes on as one of the substitutes, but it's a tidy game, and that man Rosler, the German centre forward, 11 minutes, and he puts them 1-0 up in the lead, and that's how we go in at half time. We keep hammering away, near misses, hit woodwork, but we couldn't score. And then just on 80 minutes, Paul Walsh, dangerous character, sometimes see him on television nowadays, dangerous midfielder, but also could score a good goal. And he did on this night, amazing dribbling past Pavel while Pavel was just thinking about it, and made it 2-0 for Manchester City. And the others in the City team, Paul Walsh, Rosler, Mark Gordino, and Niall Quinn came on as substitute for him. Steve Lomas, Nicky Summerby, all names that associate with Manchester City. And they went away with a 2-0 then, when a 2-0 win that they deserved. Nobody expected them to, but they did. 2-0 it was, and that's us out of the League Cup. Next game is away to Leeds. Now, last place you'd want to go after a defeat at home is Leeds United, but that's what we had to face, and we send an unchanged team. We're ready for whatever comes forward. Leeds on at the top, but they're pushing their way there, and we are third at the moment in the table. And Keegan sends an unchanged team. He swaps players around, but Venison goes back to fullback, and Steve Watson goes forward into midfield where Venison had been. People are hoping that's he's got method in his madness, as he usually has with Keegan. It's 0-0 at half time, and sadly it's 0-0 at the final. Where the others have been 0-0s that have been good football, this was awful. It was dire. Neither side wanted to lose, and the net result was a complete whiteout. I mean, all in midfield, and very difficult to see any way through. Leeds side, Lukic in goal, Gary Kelly at fullback, David Weatherall, Tony DeRigo, Carlton Palmer, Gary McAllister, and a young man called Gary Speed in their midfield. Noel Whelan, dangerous forward, and David White, another dangerous attacker. But not on this day. 40,000 in Elland Road, and they had to watch a 0-0 game against Newcastle United. We're now away to Norwich, and they aren't really challenging us. Steve, come and do the adverts.
Okay, yep, a little break here and we'll do the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website mrvickies.co.uk or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174 or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC Matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you can take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel.
You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 08 44 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9. And you can catch us on the Red, the Toon and the Cat and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day. Okay, we're back with George, Norwich away.
Yeah, that's right. This is a game we should win, but with like Newcastle fans know that what you should do and what you don't do are two different things. Norwich a good footballing side. John Deehan, their former Villa player, as their manager, and Andy Marshall in goal, Darryl Such, Neil Adams, Ian Crook, real names in football. Jeremy Goss, Mike Sherrin, and Ashley Ward. Dangerous set of players, but shouldn't be beating us. Anyway, we go, and unfortunately, Neil Adams, their centre backs, heads a goal in from a corner within a minute, and then on 10 minutes, Ashley Ward, their dangerous attacker, makes it 2-0, and it looks like we're in for a very tough time. Then right just before half-time, Rule Fox scores for us from a penalty spot after Paul Kitson was brought down in the penalty area. 22,000 at Carrow Road, 2-1 at half-time, and that's the way it stayed to the end. Norwich really dug their heels in. They weren't going to give this one away. And whatever we did, we couldn't force the win. And sadly, that defeat took us down to 4th place in the league, which is the lowest we'd been all season up to that point. So then we come home to a home game against Manchester City in the league this time. And we're hoping we can avoid the banana skin that they were in the cup, the League Cup, they almost the same teams as played in the cup. Dibble and Kerrigan, Terry Phelan, Peter Beagry, Gary Flitcroft, Nicky Summerby, Steve Lomas, Paul Walsh and Uwe Rossler. 35,000 at the game. And Keegan plays our unchanged team: Pavel, Venison, Beresford, Steve Howie, Peacock. Paul Bracewell comes in because our Belgian centre-half, the Prince, has got an injury. Rob Lee, Peter Beardsley, Paul Kitson and Rule Fox. 35,000 at the game. And it's an entertaining game, but unfortunately, an entertaining game that didn't have any goals. 0-0 at half-time and 0-0 it stayed at the end. But wasn't for the want of trying. It was some attractive football from both teams. Near misses aplenty, hit woodwork and near misses, but we just couldn't get the winner. And unfortunately, because of other results around us, that 0-0 sent us down to 5th in the league, so even lower than we had been. The next game is the FA Cup 3rd round, and it's against Blackburn. We hopeful of making progress, but Blackburn are the team of the moment, and they're the team of the moment because of a strike partnership of Sutton and Shearer, who was making life difficult for everybody. And in this game, Blackburn, Tim Flowers, Helen Berg, Colin Henry, Paul Warhurst, Graham Lasso, Mark Atkins, Stuart Ripley, a dangerous winger, substituted by Mike Newell, another dangerous winger, Tim Sherwood, Jason Wilcox, Alan Shearer, and Chris Sutton. 32,000 at the game at St James's Park, and it's an entertaining game. Our team unchanged with Pavel in goal, and right down to Beardsley on the left side of midfield, and it looks like we should get something out of this. But then, lo and behold, on 31 minutes, Chris Sutton pops up with a corner and makes it 1-0 to Blackburn, and that's how it stayed at half time. It looked like it was going to stay that to the end, but a crafty piece of work by Lee Clark played in Rob Lee, and he didn't miss and made it 1-1 on 57 minutes. So we get a draw and the prospect of a replay at Blackburn, and so it's a replay at Blackburn, and it's not a happy hunting ground for us, but that's where we've got to go and see what. So the next home game is Manchester United at home in the league. They'd given us a tough time at Old Trafford, but everybody was hopeful we'd do better at home. 35,000 at the game, and they bring their team of all-stars. Alec Ferguson, manager now, and actually had been for quite some time. And Schmeichel, Bruce Pallister, Dennis Irwin. Nicky Butt comes into the midfield in this game. Ryan Giggs, Roy Keane, Brian McClare, Lee Sharp, a dangerous winger that they brought in, and Mark Hughes and Eric Cantona. So it's the same star-studded lineup against our unchanged team, and a good game, an entertaining football game, end-to-end stuff, and it's Mark Hughes, sadly, who puts Manchester in the lead on 12 minutes, and it looks like they might get away with the 1-0 win, but Paul Kitson scores what I think probably his best goal for Newcastle United when he ran through the Manchester defence, and as soon as he got to the edge of the area, slotted the ball in the bottom corner, giving Schmeichel no chance. And so a 1-1 draw, quite creditable against a strong Manchester United team. And still we're fixed in fifth in the league, which disappoints some of the people in the Gallagher corner, because we had been first for so many weeks at the start of the season, but we've come through a rather lean spell, is the best way to describe it. We're now after Blackburn for the replay of the cup, and it's exciting game, a good game, and it's a game I remember because I had been in hospital and the lads wouldn't let me drive the car, so they decided they would go on the bus and take me with them, and we went to Blackburn on this bus, and we stopped in Clitheroe, and the Newcastle fans just took over this pub in Clitheroe, and it was amazing. I've never seen anything like it then or since. And we're sitting talking, and as you do, about football and all the rest of it. And somebody in the crowd, and I wish they wouldn't do this, said, he used to play for Newcastle. And, who's he? And somebody mentioned the name Mitchell. Well, this kid got on top of the table and shouted to the bar, hey, Bobby Mitchell's over here. And before we could say anything, explain anything, the table was covered with beer. So the lads had a nice free night on my name. But I wish people wouldn't do that. It's a bit embarrassing. Anyway, going to the match in the bus, we're escorted by police from Clitheroe all the way to Blackburn. and we're going along this road at the policeman in front of on a motorbike. And we stopped at a junction, and the driver opens the door and he hands me this big black bag. And I said, "What do you want us to do with this?" "Hide it over the wall, hide it over the wall." So I sling this black bag over the wall with the copper just in front of her. It was full of the beers that he didn't want them to find when we got to Blackburn, and the empty cans and all of that. And, well, I was chairman of the bench in North Tyneside at the time. It wouldn't have looked very nice. But it was a match I remember. So off we go to Blackburn for the replay. And it's going well. It's a good game, entertaining game, hard-fought game. And I remember that Pav was substituted, and I think it was Steve Harper. He was as nervous as a kitten. You could see we were behind his goal. Anyway, Lee Clark scored on 57 minutes and it looked like we're going to sail through. But then Chris Sutton scored an equaliser on 75, and Maud Hottiger on 85 made it 2-1. And we got through into the next round of the cup. But it was an entertaining game, a good game. And our old friend Shearer caused us problems, but not enough to take us out of the cup on that occasion. So we next go to an away game at Sheffield Wednesday. And Hillsborough has got old-fashioned, unfortunately. But in those days, it was a ground people used to like to go to. In fact, they used to hold cup semi-finals there for many years. And it was a ground I liked as well. But they shouldn't be, how can I say, they shouldn't be challenging us because they're just not there with us. But however, stubborn resistance on this occasion, and managed by Trevor Francis now with the first £1 million player, and some talented players, but obviously on their way down rather than up. Chris Woods in goal, Peter Atherton, Des Walker, Dan Petrescu, Ian Nolan, Chris Williams, Bart Williams, John Sheridan, Chris Waddle, name we know, Guy Whittingham, and Gordon Watson, and Mark Bright as a substitute. Some talented players there, but they shouldn't be challenging us. We have unchanged team: Pavel, Hottiger, Beresford, Howie, Peacock, Venison, Rob Lee, Albert still out with injury, Lee Clark, Kitson, Piedsley, Rule Fox, and Keith Gillespie comes on as a substitute. 23,000 at Hillsborough for a match which was reasonably entertaining, but a match which was 0-0 at half time and 0-0 for the final. It was just one of those games where nobody could stick the ball in, and not the first time I've said that for this season. I think this is something that we were criticised for at the end of the season, because even a point, a couple of those games had gone our way, 1-goal wins, and we would have been challenging for the top of the league instead of being where we were in fourth and fifth thereabouts for this part of the season. However, 0-0 it was at Sheffield, and we come home for the return game against Wimbledon, and it's always going to be an entertaining game. They bullied us at their own place. Keegan wasn't going to have that again, and I think it prepared the team in a slightly different way. And with Wimbledon, the same setup: Segas in goal, Warren Barton, Kenny Cunningham, Chris Perry, Andy Thorne, Alan Kimball, Robbie Earle, Vinnie Jones, Andy Clark, Effin Akuku, and John Goodman. They're a good side now, but a hard side. Well, Keegan played the same team, but he set them up differently, and he killed the threat from Andy Clark and played an extra person in midfield. He brought Paul Bracewell in and left Kitson on the bench, And I think that worked because it nullified some of the hard stuff that Wimbledon were prone to have a go at. And Paul Bracewell was quite a hard man himself. So we go on, and Rule Fox puts us in the lead on 34 minutes, and Efna Kuku comes close several times, but we go in 1-0 at half time, and then none other than Beardsley scores on 51 minutes to make it 2-0. Efna Kuku then eventually does hit the back of the net, but it's on 78 minutes, and we see out the 2-1 victory, which takes us back up to fourth place in the league. We're now at home to Swansea in the FA Cup fourth round. Swansea always got a good reputation as a cup side, and we've got an unchanged team. Cernacek, Hottiger, etc. Except he's kept Paul Bracewell in, having brought him in. 35,000 at the game, and Swansea come with all their Welsh internationals: Mike Basham, John Ford, Sean Chappell, Martin Hayes, David Penny, John Cornforth, Steve Toppy, and John Hodge, all current Welsh internationals. Frank Burrows is the manager, former player, former Nottingham Forest player, but gaining a reputation as a coach. First half is only highlight is that our substitute, who's Paul Kitson, managed to score just before half time to make it 1-0. But Swansea aren't lying down; that they're giving it a real go, and it looks as though that it's going to peter out. But Paul Kitson wasn't going to have it that way. On 48 minutes, he scored again, and then on 72 minutes, he scored again to get his hat trick. And a lot of people felt on that day justified his reason for coming to Newcastle and his fee and all that sort of rubbish. But he had a good game, there's no doubt about it. 3-0 win in the cup, so we're through to the next round. Next, we're at home in the league to Everton, and they always a tough game against the alternative Scousers. Joe Royals, the manager, the old centre forward who served his apprenticeship at Oldham and then came back to Everton when they needed a manager. 35,000 again in the crowd, and we're now up to third again in the league, which is pleasing everybody. Everton team, well, names that people still talk about: Neville Southall. Neville Southall was an incredible goalkeeper, but somebody who, when you looked at him, you wondered how he became a professional footballer, because he always looked about 3 sizes too big, but desperately good goalkeeper. Earl Bartlett, Dave Burrows, David Unsworth, David Watson, who we knew from down the road, Matt Jackson, John Eberle, Barry Horn, Andy Limpar, Joe Parkinson, and Graham Stewart, the dangerous Scottish centre forward. Refereeing this match, a man called David Ellery, who became very famous as the leader of the referees in those days, and sort of the web character of those days. But a nice guy, David Ellery. He was a gentleman. The 35,000 saw an entertaining game, which sadly looked like it was going to peter out to a 0-0. But then Borough Magic by Peter Beardsley, and unfortunately he's upended. He's just going to score, and then Rule Fox upended, and Peter Beardsley steps up and takes Wayne to lead with a penalty. A couple of minutes later, Rule Fox makes it 2, and Everton weren't really ever in the game. They certainly weren't after that. It was petered out to a 2-0 victory to Newcastle United, and we're third in the league still. So now we'll go to Queen's Park Rangers for a game against them at Loftus Road. the talented football side. They're now managed by Ray Wilkins, the ex-Chelsea and England midfielder. Tony Robertson, goal, Bardsley, MacDonald, Maddox, Rufus Brevet, Simon Barker, Ian Holloway, who was quite a character as a manager, but he was quite a character as a player as well. Andy Impey, Trevor Sinclair, and none other than Les Ferdinand. They basically, in this match, it was a Ferdinand game. It's the only way to describe it. He ran the show from start to finish, scored on 4 minutes, scored on 7 minutes, and then on 19 minutes, laid on a third for Simon Barker to make it 3-0 at half time. In 3-0 it stayed. Whatever we did in the second half, we weren't ever going to get back in that game. But it was still entertaining in the sense that it's always nice to see a player, even though it's opposition, shine the way that Ferdinand that day. And if any game made it clear why Ferdinand came to Newcastle United, I think it was that game, because he frightened our lot to death. It was 45 minutes of sublime striker play. Anyway, we lost 3-1, but still stuck in third. Next game's at home to Forest, Nottingham Forest. And we want something out of this game. We got to make progress in this league. And Frank Clark's now manager of Nottingham Forest. And names in the team: Stuart Pearce, Scott Gemmell, Steve Stone, Stan Collymore, Ian Warren. A good side. We send out an unchanged team, except that Keith Gillespie gets injured and Paul Bracewell has to come on and substitute. 35,000 at the ground. And Rule Fox and Rob Lee make it 0-0 at half time. Jason Lee scores for them, a consolation, but Rule Fox and Robert Lee by then on 47 and 73 minutes had made it 2 for us. So we beat Forest 2-1. Next is a FA Cup 5th round, and it's against our old friends Manchester City. And it's not going to be an easy one, but they send the usual team with all their stars: Brightwells, Nicky Sumby, Keith Curl, Flitcroft, Beagrie, Uwe Rosler, Niall Quinn up front with Rosler. 18 minutes, Keith Gillespie scores. 29 minutes, Uwe Rosler equalised. Then on 34, John Beresford scores with a drive from the outside the area. And on 64th minute, Keith Gillespie makes it 3-1. A game we never looked like losing. It was difficult to understand how we lost the League Cup game against this side, because they're virtually the same teams, but that's football, isn't it? So a 3-1 victory against Manchester City, and we're making progress. Next is a home game against Aston Villa, and we are now sitting third still. It would be nice to hold third with Villa's side with some stars in it: Steve Staunton, ex-Liverpool, Ugo Eggio, Sean Teal, Paul McGrath from Manchester United, Andy Townsend, who we see on the telly and on the radio quite a lot, Dwight York, and Dean Saunders, who we got to know, and 34,000 in St James's for the visit to Villa, and it's a entertaining game, good football. Barry Venison scores one of his rare goals against them to open the scoring. And just before half time, Andy Townsend makes it 1-1. Then after this half time whistle, it's a Peter Beardsley show. He just tears Villa apart and scores 2 beautiful goals on 55 and 66 minutes. And we take Villa 3-1, which is very satisfying. We next go to Ipswich, who'd give us such a tough time at St James's Park. And we go to Portman Road with 18,000 at Portman Road. We send the same team. Keegan Stuckenby's tried and tested. George Burley's their manager, former player, Scottish international fullback. And it's a dream first half. Because Peter Beardsley's on form and just tearing Ipswich apart. And Ruel Fox and Paul Kitson on 12 and 38 minutes make it 2-0 at half-time. And after half-time, Ipswich dig their heels in. They aren't going to lose any more goals. And 2-0 it stays and fixes us nicely in third place. Next game is away to Liverpool. We'd had a good game against Liverpool at St James's, but it was going to be a little bit tougher, I think, at Anfield. 39,000 at the game, and they were the all-stars. Roy Evans is their manager now. David James, Jones, Barb, Ruddock, Scales, McManaman, Jamie Redknapp now, John Barnes, Robbie Fowler, Ian Rush, and Mark Walters, and Michael Thomas as a substitute. They just bought Michael Thomas from Arsenal. Entertaining game, but it was always Liverpool's game. 0-0 at half-time, which everybody was grateful for. But on 57 minutes, Robbie Fowler opens the scoring. And on 63 minutes, Ian Rush makes it 2-0. 2-0 against a strong Liverpool team that's up there at the top with us at Anfield is not a desperate result, but still, when we're hoping to move up the league, it's one which we would have liked to have got something out of. Next, we're home to West Ham, and West Ham managed now by Harry Redknapp. All the names in that Breaker, Julian Dix, Martin Mallon, Ian Bishop, Don Hutchison, Matthew Rush, Michael Hughes, and Tony Cotty. Don Hutchison, of course, played just down the road and still has a desperate dislike for Newcastle United when he's on the television or the radio. But never mind, he'll get over it eventually. A win here could sit us nicely in third spot, and that's what happens. It's our game. Lee Clark on 17 minutes. West Ham never looked like scoring, and Paul Kitson on 52 makes it 2-0, and we sailed to a 2-0 victory, which was very enjoyable, but well earned as well. So we're now away to Everton in the FA Cup quarter-final, and the thought of a FA Cup final is rattling around Tyneside again now that we're at the quarter-final. And it looks like we might at least get a replay in this game because we're 0-0 half-time. Looks like it's heading to 0-0. But unfortunately, we get sloppy at a corner, and Dave Watson, the centre-half, heads in from that corner and makes it 1-0. And unfortunately, that's how it stays till the end. So our FA Cup run ends in the quarter-final, which is quite sad because everybody was hoping that we might get a trip to Wembley. Now at home to Arsenal, a team that's round about us and pushing hard to get honours with their star-studded team: Dixon, Winterburn, John Jensen, Steve Bowles, Tony Adams, Steve Morrow, Ian Wright, John Hartson, big bustling centre-forward, Paul Merson and Glenn Helder, with Ray Parler on as substitute. All names that we still know nowadays. Gary Willard's the referee, a well-known referee in those days. Our team, nearly the team that the teams had all season, is Michael Hottiger. Brings in Robbie Elliott because there's an injury to Beresford. Venison, Peacock, Bracewell, Gillespie, Lee Kitson, Beardsley and Fox. The Albert's still suffering quite a lot of bad injury, and Peter Beardsley saves were. It's 0-0. It looks like it's going to be a desperate 0-0 right at the end. And on 89 minutes, Beardsley scores one of his wonder dribbles and slots it into the net and makes it 1-0. Hardly time to kick off after the goal, and we get our 1-0 win. We now will wait to Southampton, and Southampton team of all stars. Grobbelaar they got from Liverpool. Kenneth Moncourt from West Ham, Simon Charlton, Neil Madison, Jim Magilton, Matt Letizia, of course, always a thorn in our side, Neil Shipperley and Gordon Watson. A tidy side, but a one that we still should be beating. 15,000 in the Dell. Strange little ground, but strange or not, it was a nightmare for us on this day because Paul Kitson makes it 1-0 to us on 18 minutes and stays that way till half time. It looks like we're going to sail to a victory, a narrow one, but a victory. But then the same Letizia does what he's done before to us, and it's just unplayable. Sets up 3 goals in the last 2 minutes, the last 5 minutes. Neil Haney, 86, Gordon Watson, 89, and Neil Shipperley on 90 minutes. To say that the Newcastle fans were breathless after that is putting it mildly. Fuming is the best way to describe it. But that's how it goes sometimes, and particularly with somebody like Letizia. Home to Norwich, and a game we should win. 36,000 at the game, and unchanged side for us, with Bracewell keeping his place, and Steve Howie's still in the team as well. It's a good game, but a one that is ours from the off, with goals from Beardsley 2 and Paul Kitson up to 74. So Beardsley 8 minutes 42, including a pen, and Paul Kitson 74. Norwich just weren't in the game. This was our game, always was going to be, and that's how it finished. So we're sitting still in 3rd place. Other results went for us, so we're still there. Chelsea now at away. Tough game, always is at Chelsea. Unchanged team for us. 2 injuries in the game though, Rob Lee and Paul Kitson. So Steve Watson and Lee Clark come on as substitutes. Chelsea, Kevin Hitchcock, Steve Clark, who was making a name for himself as Scotland manager, Frank Sinclair, Scott Minto, Gavin Peacock, David Rocastle, Spackman, Furlong, Spencer, and Mark Steen, all talented players. But 23,000 at Stamford Bridge. Well, we get off to a very, very difficult start with Gavin Peacock slotting the ball in 30 minutes. And it's like that all the way through. And then right at the death, 88 minutes, there's a free kick and Mark Hottiger steps up to take it, and bang, it's 1-1. We get a very creditable one on Joe that fits us nicely at 3rd place. So we're now away to Everton, and hoping that a victory will consolidate our place as 3rd, but not to be. Sadly, Everton are more than on the metal, and they're dangerous forward. Our team's unchanged. They're dangerous forward. Joe Parkinson scores 2 goals, one on 23 minutes, one on 49. And we never looked like winning this game or even getting into this game. Everton were just too good on the day. 35,000 in Goodison Park. And we come away with a 2-0 defeat, which slips us down to 4th place. So we come home to a game against Leeds United. It's again, crowd, Gallagher Corner particularly, want to see a win, so that we get up at the top. It looks going to be difficult though. Gary McAllister in 25 minutes scores for Leeds from a penalty after a handball by Robbie Elliott. Then Tony Yeboah, very, very talented and dangerous winger for Leeds, makes it 2, and Robbie Elliott redeems himself slightly with a goal from a corner to make it 2-1 at half time. And 2-1's how it stayed, but it was always going to be Leeds' game. They were on form that day and not going to give anything away. Gary Speed, one of their stars, of course, as was Gary McAllister and Charlton Palmer. Brian Dean, a big centre forward, was giving us trouble, and Tony Yeboah, their winger. It leads 2-1, and deservedly so. It was their game. So we then turned to an away game at Manchester City, and desperate for a victory, but it wasn't to be. City were really on form now. Tony Corton, a big goalkeeper, had just been bought, and otherwise names that people have already heard: Flitcroft, Phelan, Keith Curl, Niall Quinn, of course, Paul Walsh, Uwe Rosler. Brian Horton's the manager of City, the old City player, old Bolton player, always in the Lancashire area. And it's a good enough game, but it's a game without goals. It's another 0-0. And it's worth checking to see how many 0-0s we had in this particular season. But anyway, it unfortunately slipped because of other results. We slipped down to 5th place in the league. And people were quite sad about that. Newcastle come home to Tottenham now, and Tottenham had given us such a hard time at White Hart Lane. We wanted to do the same to them here. Well, it looked like we might when on 7 minutes Keith Gillespie scored, and on 10 minutes Darren Peacock scored a rare goal from a corner, and it looked like we're going great guns. Then all of a sudden, Nick Barnby, 22, Jurgen Klinsmann on 24, Darren Anderton on 26, and we're going 3-2 down at half time. Stunned silence in the Gallagher corner, and then all the murmuring when the teams went off at half time, when people chewing in their beards because of what they'd just witnessed, because it was our game. We were taking it no bother, and then suddenly bang. And the cause of the problem was little Barnby, the guy from ex-Middlesbrough player, played out of his skin that day, and Klinsmann and Darren Anderton weighed in. Anyway, after half time, we seemed to sort ourselves out in the dressing room, and on 70 minutes, Peter Beardsley made it 3-3. So we get a draw and retain our 5th position. Say it was disappointing, putting it mildly, but so it was. We're away to Blackburn now, and our old friend Mr. Shearer's there, and it would be nice to get something out of this game to fix where we are in the league, but it wasn't to be. It's a dour game. Could have been 0-0 except for one person. Shearer chased something that was nothing on 29 minutes. Yes, there he is. And Newcastle defence didn't follow him. And of course, he just waltzed it across the penalty area and slammed it into the net and left us 1-0 at half time. And it stayed like that till the end. It was a dire game. It wasn't even attractive in any stretch of the imagination. So we lose that 1-0. And we're now 6th in the league, which is unhappy for everybody in the ground. And the last game of the season, Crystal Palace, entertaining game. It looks like we're going to skate this one. Rule Fox 6 minutes, Robert Lee 26 minutes, Keith Gillespie 28 minutes, 3-0 at half time. You think, well, that's it. It's going to be 4 or 5. Well, it doesn't always work like that at Newcastle. Chris Armstrong on 51, Ray Houghton, who they'd bought from Liverpool just weeks before, on 81, and it suddenly was 3-2. And people were getting memories of the 3 goals that went in at Southampton at the end of the game. But it didn't happen. We held on to the 3-2 win and ended our season on a victory and ended in 6th place. And the debating point always with that season for me was all the 0-0 draws and how many of those could we have won. If we'd only won a couple, we would have been 3rd or even 2nd in the league, but we didn't. But 6th place in second year in the Premiership isn't too bad, but I think people like myself who follow the team regularly could see we missed opportunities, and those 0-0s were the big opportunities, and we could have held on to a higher position. Good chance, Everton the Cup quarter-final, but just not to be. We just failed at the wrong time. But you could see the formation of the entertainers and who was playing.
Great stuff, George, as always. Thank you for taking the time to do it, and look forward to seeing you again soon, mate. Take care.
Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you.